Hi, this is Michael Uslan. You're listening to Batman on Film.
I'm vengeance.
I have given a name to my pain.
The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill the Bat of Gotham. I'm Batman.
Hello, Bat family, and welcome to this episode, number 177 of the Batman on Film podcast. BOF is the sponsor and a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network. Check out all the shows over at batmanpodcastnetwork.com and follow us on Twitter at BatPodNetwork. I'm Garret Grev. Thank you for listening. We have just a really outstanding edition of the Batman on Film podcast this week. I'm actually blown away. It's not often. Let me say this. The term rock star, I think, gets thrown around a lot. Sometimes it's unwarranted. You hear like, oh, they're, a rock star, the rock star of finance. And it's just like some guy that's good at accounting or investing. Like, you're not a rock star. You don't look like a rock star. But like legitimately, we have a rock star of comic art that is coming on the show today. You're listening today. We're recording in two parts, but he's joining the show. This is sort of the lead in. It's just the taster. I won't bury the lead anymore. Lee Bermejo is joining the podcast today, and we get a chance to interview him. In fact, in just a bit, Bill, Editor-in-Chief Bill Jett Ramey is joining the show. We are going to have Lee Bermejo on the show. It's like star-studded, action-packed. But guess who else? It's not just these, titans of the entertainment industry that are going to be on the show. You also get the guy I'm going to introduce you with. Because, I don't know, you're just going to let me interview with Lee Bermejo with Bill? I got to have some reinforcements here. So everybody's favorite librarian at the Batman Book Club is joining yet again. He is very comfy here. We love him. BOF contributor, host of the Batman Book Club, Ryan Lauer is on the show to help me pull it all off somehow. We'll see how we do. Ryan, welcome aboard, buddy.
Thank you, Garret, for having me on yet again. This is a fun time. Very excited for this, and always honored when you extend the invite my way to come on and talk some Batman, because I'm always in the mood to talk some Batman, and we've got a doozy of a show that you have lined up for us today. I tell you, woo!
Here's the deal. This is my third episode that I'm hosting, right? Mm-hmm. You've been hosting the Batman Book Club for like 40 more episodes than that. So I'm actually don't feel honored. Feel like I'm using you for some heavy lifting here. I'm like, hey, geez, we got to get other people involved. Otherwise, it's just too intimidating. No, it's a real treat, and I can't wait for everyone to get a chance to hear the interview. And we'll get into that in just a bit. So it's I think last week we talked about the DC Showcase shorts. We're going to be coming back before some of the DC animated features. We're kind of like that DC animated short. We've got just a bit of news to cover, and we've got a little game to play, and then we're going to get to the main event. We get Bill here, we get Lee here. Lee Bermejo, it's crazy. Mm-hmm. And that's the whatever animated feature. We get to be, maybe hopefully as good as that really cool Batman black and white one. I can't remember what that was named. That one always stands out in my mind. I feel like that was maybe in front of the first death of Superman. I can't remember. Anyway, not important. Let's get into the news.
3, 2, 1.
Cue music. Cue Becky.
Good evening.
All right, Lauer. So, hang on to your butts. I got something surprising here for you. No one was expecting it, and no one has even talked about it yet. Not on the internet. There's been no think pieces. No one's been tweeting about it. None of that.
So heard it here first.
You're going to hear right here first. Hope you're sitting down. Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's officially rated R. Whoa! What? Crazy! Who saw this coming? So on the MPAA's website, they announced, or it wasn't really an announcement, it was posted that Zack Snyder's Justice League received an R rating for violence and some language. Ryan, is this a shocker to you?
Well, first up, the actual announcement today is not announcement today. I'm sorry. The announcement is not a shocker because I'm pretty sure Snyder himself said it semi-recently that pushing for an R rating. I thought he said
He
that.
did. That's true.
His vision of Batman vs Superman that was released on Blu-ray, the Ultimate Edition, was rated R. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I don't have any strong feelings either way, whether it would have been rated R or like PG-13, because I'm just kind of, it's rated what it's rated. I understand points of view on both sides. For me, this is something on streamer. It's already a little bit of a niche audience, just being streaming only. I don't know. I don't have moving of the needle either way on it. I'm not really surprised. I'm not excited or unhappy that it's rated R. I wouldn't have been excited or unhappy if it was PG-13. So it's just kind of like, I think anything that happens or is announced, quote unquote, between now and March 18th is just going to have like a whatever thing for me of like, let's rip off the Band-Aid, man. Let's get this thing out so we can kind of calm down in the fandom sector.
I think that's great. I think it's a great way to look at it. And, truly.
It was a political answer right there. Totally.
Oh, yeah. You danced.
Nobody won on that one.
You bobbed and you weaved. And you know me, like us Minnesotans, we don't like to be too controversial. We like to.
You'd think I was from Minnesota with that answer.
We like to get along with everybody, It's how we stay nice. But yeah, to your point, if anyone was surprised by this, you really weren't paying attention very much at all. You probably don't talk about superhero movies on the interwebs or anything like that. Yeah. And you probably aren't a big fan of Snyder, because if you were, you'd realize this guy makes a lot of R-rated movies. Unless you're a cartoon owl, you're probably R-rated or really close to R-rated. Or there's an R-rated cut. If there's an R-rated cut of the cartoon owls, that's really something. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I wasn't shocked by this. Snyder had said as much. I think months back he let us know Batman was going to drop at least one F-bomb, and it sounds like there might be some more F-bombs. Yeah. And kind of same thing for me. I don't necessarily have an issue with Zack Snyder making an R-rated movie. Like, if you boil it down to that, it seems silly to suggest otherwise. If Snyder was given the free reign to invest money into his cut by AT&T, and they said, hey, if you want to make it R, it's fine. It's just going to be a streaming thing. And it's not going broad to theaters. Like what they need it to do is different. Why not? Why not? What the heck? I'm a little bit of a Puritan. I'm not that much of a Puritan. I will say this. I did ask my wife, and she's like, wait a minute, they're making a cartoon movie that's rated R? What the heck? I'm like, no, this is with real people. She's like, yeah, but it's with your cartoons in it, right? I'm like, yeah, but it's real people, and it's this sort of different take. And she goes, yeah, I guess, some of that, like, she watched the first Deadpool with me, and that was obviously rated R. She's like, but with Superman, it feels weird, doesn't it? I'm like, yeah, it does. And that's the same place I'm at. With Superman, it feels weird. I never thought I'd see in my life Superman in a live action movie that was rated R. But this is a very specific thing. Mm-hmm. Like, how I've come to peace with all of this isn't My Heroes. This is an Elseworlds version of My Heroes.
Well, and I hate the argument is, but that BVS Ultimate Edition is rated R and Superman was in that. And it's like, that doesn't change anything that you just said. That doesn't mean that you mean, oh, because we got it before, then I'm okay with it now that they do it again. There is something semi-odd about Superman being in an R-rated movie because he's the Boy Scout. And that's kind of an odd concept to me, but also like myself and our Bat Brother BOF's Peter Vera are part of this site of Bill's site that borderline love that movie. But it doesn't mean that we kind of still don't think that it's a little strange for Superman to be in an R-rated thing, but also it's very much like, whatever, like, who cares anymore? Like, meh.
Yeah, and I think very similar along somewhat similar lines are, I see this one a lot. Oh, where were people upset when Justice League Dark Apocalypse War came out last year? That was rated R and it was a cartoon. And I kind of raised my hand and say, hey, I said pretty much right away, I think it's weird that we make R-rated superhero cartoons. That feels weird to me. Not just the source material, but also the medium. And I'm very well aware in a number of Asian cultures, media, it doesn't matter that it's animated. You can have very adult content, very, very adult content from what I hear, all the way to just sort of typical R-rated action fare and everything else. It seems different. It feels different here to have these characters in a cartoon and have it be an animated film and have it be R-rated. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's a weird take. But just like the animated, direct to home video animated movies, this is also a to your point, a niche product that isn't a general audience focused thing. It's not live action going out to 3,500 screens where you need, a 4-quadrant picture to play to, mom, dad, grandma, men, women, and the kids. Like it's not that thing. So I'm going to be able to watch it for what it is. I hope to enjoy it for what it is. We'll see. But yeah, if there's a couple F-bombs and some more graphic violence than maybe you typically see in a superhero movie, I don't know, kind of chalk it up. I've seen Snyder do it before, right? I've watched Watchmen. I watched 300. I like both those movies.
Yeah. Well, I think also, you can definitely go to, if you don't want to see it, then you don't have to watch it. And I firmly believe in that also of, if it doesn't interest me or I'm starting to watch it and I'm not liking it, well, then I can shut it off. That's fine. And then you don't have to just let it go and move on to the next thing. But I think like you just said with F-bombs and stuff to me with that and this genre a little bit is if they're to do that, it's the equivalent of in a comic book that they do the weird, a hashtag exclamation, something to symbolize, this is where they cussed. It stands out in a negative aspect to me, to where I feel like you could keep your violent level, and your atmosphere that's mature and all that. Keep it rated R. It's almost now distracting for you to throw an F-bomb in there. It was very distracting. The one F-bomb in BVS, the Ultimate Edition, was okay, that just feels kind of forced. It
feels forced. That's
you could be more clever with your language, and have the same impact, but it wouldn't stand out with a sort of feeling. And I know that almost sounds like I'm looking too much into it, but it just something that pops into my head of well, that was distracting instead of effective. Well,
and it's also the difference between a property like this and a property like Deadpool, where in Deadpool it is intentional, it is forced. That's the point.
Yeah,
the point is, man, a foul-mouthed, hyper-violent superhero, not a superhero, but comic character.
Yeah.
Isn't that shocking? Isn't that wild? Isn't this kind of the package? It's not the package. When you do Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, whatever, that's not the pack. The package is the heroes. And if all of a sudden you have, a couple naughty words that stick out like a sore thumb because you're doing an adult thing and this is for grown-ups, it can be distracting. So I hear you entirely.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to give it a fair shot because I'm definitely very interested. So, and maybe the cussing will come and go and I'll say, you know what, didn't seem distracting. I don't know. I haven't seen it. It's just as much a chance of it not being distracting as being distracted. I haven't seen it. So who knows?
Who knows? And you know what, as a number of very intelligent, very thoughtful, very considerate individuals on the interwebs have pointed out, you can always go watch your 2017 version of Justice League. And to that I say, yeah, I sure can, and
because they're preaching to the choir on that one.
Man,
Garrett will throw that in.
I don't mind watching it. It sounds like a nice little Friday night. And and while I know, the Snyder cut of Justice League is not meant for kids, I can watch that one with my older boys.
With your boys, yeah.
Relatively few issues, so it's just fine. It's fine. This is the thing about variety, Ryan. It's the spice of life.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Big news. I didn't know, HBO Max is doing, 4-hour, giant old reshoots of movies from 2017, but apparently they're also getting in the podcast game. Who knew it? I didn't know.
They're trying to come get our market, Garrett. Okay. They're trying to take us over.
It's a good thing we're bringing in big guns like Lee and then getting the editor-in-chief back on here.
They're here to save us.
Right, because HBO Max is bringing in the star power with a new Batman comedic take on the Batman mythos, starring, get this, the vocal talents of one Jeffrey Wright. Yes, Jeffrey Wright, who is playing James Gordon in Matt Reeves' upcoming The Batman, will be portraying Batman in an upcoming HBO Max podcast. Mr. Lauer, how many times did you have to read this to fully track who was doing what for whom and where with which take on the character?
There's about 3 because it was definitely because I first read of Jeffrey Wright is going to do the voice of Batman. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting, but okay, cool. And then I read the article and how it was going to be a comedic take. And I'm like, say what? Like, okay, so is this going to be a little bit of a mix of Batman Brave and the Bold and then how Batman's portrayed in the animated Harley Quinn series? It's going to just be a blend of a Adult Swim on Cartoon Network, but podcast, and it's
right.
Okay. And then the rest of the cast that was announced is heavily SNL former present cast members and stuff too. And it's just okay, sure. I mean, it's a different take. Why not?
Well, that's what got me. So so first of all, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Jeffrey Wright is going to be the name attached to a Batman podcast. That's awesome. Didn't even realize that I had skipped over the part that it said he was playing Batman. I just figured he was going to be the Commissioner Gordon, and that was kind of the name to get people to tune in and download this HBO Max podcast, which I don't think anybody knew HBO Max was doing podcasts. But there you go. You got Jeffrey Wright. That's a pull. Then I realized, oh my gosh, he's doing Batman. Super cool. Why not? That guy's talented. That could be very, very interesting. And, it adds a little layer to think about, he's Gordon here, he's Batman there. Intrigue. And then I went and read the rest of the cast list. This is before I had also missed the part about the comedic approach. I'm like, Chris Parnell, Melissa Villaseñor, Seth Meyers, John Leguizamo, Bobby Moynihan, Kenan Thompson, what? Jason Sudeikis, and it's just keep going. Paul Scheer, Tim Meadows, Fred Armisen. What is going on? Yeah, this is comedic clearly because it's a ton of well-respected, well-established comedians from movies and TV and sketch comedy shows, and they got some names to do this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's going to be interesting going along and seeing who each person is playing, which character. And once we get that first little drop of either an episode or if they're going to promo something with it and just hearing some of those voices, it's I don't know, that's exciting. Yeah. This is just totally something. I mean, it's something different. So
I never would have thought of it in a million years. And now I really want a Paul Scheer, Edward Nygma / the Riddler. It'd be pretty great. So anyway, that podcast is set to debut sometime in 2021. So between now and the end of the year, we'll get some back content to listen to. Yeah. And color me intrigued, man. I will listen to it for sure.
HBO Max, they're expanding their brand.
Speaking of new content coming in 2021, a new trailer for the animated feature Justice Society World War II dropped this week. This is a very clearly in the title, there it is, believe it or not, big surprise, World War II set tale of the first and original superhero in the DC universe, joined by, through the magic of time travel, the modern day Flash. Ryan, what'd you think of the trailer?
I thought the trailer was cool. It was exciting. As I had said on this show last episode or the one before, I just reread Darwin Cook's The New Frontier, and it's kind of piqued my interest more in exploring that golden age a little bit. And I don't have any real history on the JSA at all.
Yeah.
Once again, Peter Vera he's the one, and I mean, everybody else online that's watched it has gotten me into starting Stargirl, which is definitely like talking about JSA and stuff. And that's piqued my interest in the golden age of DC. So
it's a wonderful television program too.
For me, yeah, I'm really liking it. And this just came at the right time for me because it's like right where my interest is in these characters and stuff. And this is the next movie that's coming out. And it's got Wonder Woman. It's got, the Flash, the current Flash, but then it's also got the old Flash, as well as some other characters that I don't get much exposure to. So just the plot on page, and then to watch the trailer itself, I thought the animation looked cool and kind of different, and I really liked the trailer. I too am one that is very interested in the World War II time period. That always grabs my interest, always has. So yeah, all elements of this.
It's insane to me. The World War II setting is a big draw for me. I think it's really super interesting on so many levels. One, if you go back and study World War II, even from the little bits you learned in history, back in high school or whatever, it sounds like something out of fiction. It's insane. The whole world was at war, literally trying to stop one crazy person from taking over the entire world while committing horrible atrocities. Like I mean, if you think about how much fiction from the 20th and 21st century you can tie directly to what happened in World War II, it's mind-blowing. You can't have Star Wars without World War II. And I know that seems like a really shallow way to frame up how significant World War II was. Like, clearly that's a bigger deal than Star Wars. But like, these are the things that have become our collective, like, pop culture language of fiction. They come from that. So I think when stories, fiction stories or superhero stories are set in that time period, I think it can be tricky because you need to be respectful. There are real people that lost real lives. But it's also very intriguing to imagine what that world would have been like. And very much to your point around the New Frontier, historical fiction or superhero historical fiction, I think, has ways to draw insight through hyperbole or through contrast to what actually happened, or the limitations of actual humans in those scenarios, that tell a very meaningful story, and it can transcend just entertainment. This looks like a lot of fun. The Wonder Woman feels very much, I don't know, did you get Gal Gadot Wonder Woman vibes from it? Because I did. I thought
everything I see with Wonder Woman now in comics, I think of Gal Gadot.
You're
like,
right.
She has like cemented her place as Wonder Woman. Yeah, exactly. The Sandlot forever.
Wendy Peppercorn and Gal
That's
Gadot.
right.
That's the way it is.
I think it's an interesting to insert these heroes in that time period and stuff, because it does play a little bit with us as fans of, like, fantasy of, oh man, if we could have had superheroes in this time period, how much like tragedy we could have avoided, and stuff. That just always plays with our mindset, but yeah, I mean, just the trailer as a whole, it's got me really excited. I'm really looking forward to it.
Did you watch Superman Man of Tomorrow that came out in 2020?
I did.
I did too. And this animation style feels very similar. I don't know if I haven't read if it's supposed to be tied through some sort of continuity or not. But the animation style feels very
Archer.
Similar. Yes. Yeah. Very
Archer.
Yeah. Venture Brothers kind of. Yeah. But it is kind of that like pop art / slightly manga inspired kind of heavy outside lines, a little bit of shadowing. I think like a little bit of like Mario Paper, if you remember that game. Like
I do remember that game.
Yeah, all kind of mashed together. But yeah, Archer for sure. I wonder if they're going to be connected or not. I think that animation style looks great. I did not love the storytelling of Superman, Man of Tomorrow, so I'm hoping for better from this. But I just visually, it gave me some of those same vibes.
Yeah, I like it's very similar to that, I think, but this is only between Superman Man of Tomorrow and this movie. There was Batman Soul of the Dragon, which did not resemble it in any way.
No.
Nothing seemed like it connected to Superman Man of Tomorrow. So maybe there's a chance that they are going to do more singular vision instead of trying to connect everything like they did with the last series of movies, which made things get a little sloppy. And sometimes it seemed like, oh no, this one it's not trying to connect. And then, oh yeah, this one it's trying to, and it's got a little like, what? Nothing in this one aside from the animation made me think that it's going to connect to Superman and Man of Tomorrow. But also, guess what? That was a 1:42 trailer of an hour and 20-minute movie. So yeah,
Sure.
Who knows? Lobo could pop in and in the third act. And
Dude, the who saw Lobo as being like the second lead of that Superman movie? Just so odd. And then Kaiju at the end, like, just turns into a Godzilla movie. But you're right, and I would not mind if these DC animated movies kind of go back to what they were for a long time, just sort of standalone stories, no continuity, before what I referred to as the newish 52-ish motion animated movies. Yeah. But anyway, I'll be looking forward to this one. It hits digital on April 27th and physical copies for sale on May 11th, 2021. All right. Well, listeners, you've made it through us chat a little bit. You've listened to the news. We've got one more segment and we'll be on to the big show. What are we going to do?
Oh, boy. I know it's damn.
Flower has had a tough time. He's been on. This is his third week in the row on the podcast. And, Meatloaf will tell you 2 out of 3 ain't bad. But if those 2 out of 3 are not getting your trivia answers right, it's pretty bad. But we're going to go into America's favorite new Bat trivia game, sweeping the nation. What are you?
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
All right, so what are you? You guys know how it is. I'm going to give 3 clues that are just your regular clues. Standard. You should be able to make a guess. It could be tough, but you could maybe make a guess.
All right. So first of all, I need a disclaimer.
All right.
First, okay.
I didn't even bring anybody to both of you to play against. I didn't want you to be embarrassed.
Pressure's on. I'm all by myself now. But I have gotten both weeks, the past 2 trivias incorrect, and my gut instinct, both of them ended up being the correct answers, and I ended up thinking myself both times, which I'm so embarrassed.
Don't do that.
For somebody who hosts his own Batman Book Club podcast, and I can't get a trivia question correct, it's embarrassing. So pressure's on me right now. Thanks, Garrett.
I feel like this is your week, right?
I hope so.
You get the 3 standard clues. And if by then you're still like, oh man, that's for you. I expect you to answer this one with the 3 clues. You write it down.
Yeah.
Can
I phone a friend, Pete Vera? Well, he hasn't done good either.
He has been bad at it too. And then the 4th clue is like the giveaway clue. You should be able to get it based on the 4th clue. I'm going to read all of them off for the listener, but you're going to write down your answer down whenever you can get it. And then you flip it over. We're on the Bat honor system here.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Ready?
Yeah.
Ryan, what am I? I am a comic book, and I was released in 2008.
Okay.
It's clue number 1. What am I? I'm a comic book, but I was released in 2008. Okay. Clue number 2. My story is narrated by a newly created character who would also go on to appear in a live-action feature film. What am I?
Okay.
All right. Here comes clue number 3. The writer and artist of this book have worked together previously on similar subject matter. What am I?
I got it now.
All right. So Ryan's writing down his answer as we speak. For funsies, for the listener, let's assume not everybody got it as quickly as Ryan, and you might want that 4th clue. What am I? IGN called me, the comic book, not Garrett, the comic book I'm pretending to be for the game, deeply disturbing and completely unnerving. I don't know if they meant to rhyme, but they did. Ryan Lauer, you had your guess in 3 clues. What are you?
Joker.
You are
by
Joker.
Brian
sir.
Azzarello and Lee Bermejo.
Absolutely. We
It's
are
about time.
The 2008 classic.
I feel free.
You
Finally.
top of the mountain, Ma. 2008 comic book classic, Joker. Wildly beloved and beautifully illustrated. Just really incredible. I actually took a couple nights and revisited the title, along with some other stuff to get prepped with the interview with Mr. Bermejo here. Ryan, I'm so glad for your vindication.
Dude,
how do you feel?
I am more glad than you are by far. The narrated by was Johnny Frost,
Yes, sir.
and he was in Suicide Squad,
Yes, he was.
played by I looked this part up. I knew he was in Suicide Squad, but just Jim Parak or something.
Yep.
Which I don't know. Did he ever even get called Frost in that movie?
Yeah, I think
just something that we assumed.
I
and
think
looked it up.
No, I think Croc used his name, right?
Okay, all right, sure.
Which would make sense too, coming out of Joker. It is just really beyond gorgeous book and super unnerving. Like IGN was right, really unnerving.
Yeah,
they got it right. I was so uncomfortable reading it again. Like I can't wait to talk to Lee about it. But I thought how appropriate. We'll make the trivia game of What Are You, Lee Bermejo focus. And I know you are an Uber fan, so you're going to knock this one out of the park.
This is
all right,
I'm
Ryan.
very relieved because this would have been very embarrassing that I got it incorrect. So
just think what kind of jerk friend I am. I could have just really hung you out to dry before we went into the interview segment.
Hey Lee, this guy calls himself a fan. He got this trivia wrong again.
Again. All right. Well, that has been What Are You? And here we go, Bat fans. We are down to the main event. The real reason you tuned in to listen. You didn't see my name on the podcast and think, holy crap, download this thing right away. You didn't even think that with Ryan Lauer, even though he's got a hot new podcast. It's been around for like a year, but whatever. And, but you did see probably editor-in-chief Bill Jett Ramey, and you for sure saw comic book artist, rock star extraordinaire, like one of the coolest dudes I've ever seen, Lee Bermejo. So, thank you for listening. Let's get into the interview.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Here, ready to move out.
Okay, everybody. So here is the moment we've been teasing for the show to this point. It's the main event. It's probably the reason why you downloaded the episode. You saw a name and you said, well, that doesn't sound like the regular guys that show up on the podcast. I know this dude. This guy is a award-winning creator, the winner of the IGN Best Graphic Novel of 2008 for Joker, an Eisner Award nominee. You know him from Batman Damned, Batman Noel, Lex Luthor, Man of Steel, and his new book, DC Comics, The Art of Lee Bermejo. Lee Bermejo, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, it is a real pleasure.
When was the last time I did? I think it was right before Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, I think that you came on. Yeah, you did a podcast right before BBS. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's been a while. So it's a pleasure to be back.
Very good.
It's so great to have you. And of course, listeners, you hear another voice that wasn't on the beginning of this episode. We have the editor-in-chief of Batman and Film, Bill Jett Ramey, joining as well. Good morning, Bill. Good morning. Good afternoon, good evening. We're across a lot of time zones today. How are you doing?
We're on the central time zone. We're in what? Texas, Minnesota.
I'm in Indiana.
Indiana. I was going to say Chicago, but Indiana, and then we have Lee in Italy. So yeah, I'm doing well. I'm glad to get Lee on again, and I've talked. Me and Lee have talked for years, about Batman stuff and cool, movies and his art. And anytime I see something he's done, I'll just send him like a screenshot and go, this is freaking awesome. So I was really excited to get him on, and I got the book and I went through it. It's just great. I mean, I even have a wall dedicated to Lee in my office. I'm pointing because it's on the other side. It's some of his artwork with Batman, and of course I've got the Funko Pop, and I've got Lee Bermejo. God, I don't know who did it, but one of the action figures. I don't think it's one of the McFarlane things, but I've got it. I've got that too. So thanks for doing this, Lee. Yeah.
No, much appreciated.
Lee, it's a real pleasure for me. I have been doing some hosting duties here with the podcast. This is my third episode, and just to have a stellar guest of your talent to join the show, it's a real pleasure for me. I know Ryan, who's still on from the earlier segments in the show, has had a chance to interview you before. Suffice to say, we're massive fans of your work. Just really have enjoyed almost everything that I've seen you do. I say almost because I'm sure I haven't seen everything that you do, but everything that you've done that I've read and looked at has just really been a treat.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'd like, so you both geeked out a little bit. I think I'll geek out for a minute of Lee. That was, I was able to interview you at Graham Cracker's Comics in Chicago.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
That was a blast. And I've told the story to these two gentlemen before. I've told it to many others. I don't know what your impression of me was. Probably not as bad as I think, but you know how Chicago, traveling in downtown Chicago can be. And I was in a lunch break. I was trying to get downtown to where I could have fit everything, not rush you, but make sure I had enough time for the interview and my lunch break from work. I felt sweaty, out of breath.
Well,
and I walked by you at the counter because I'm like, I can't do this yet. I got to compose myself. I went over to the bookshelf. Calm down. Don't be gross. Don't be sweaty. Take a breath. And then I approached you. So hopefully I didn't seem unprofessional or just like some freaking out fanboy.
No,
I
not
need
at all.
100% Bill.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, that I was out of sorts because that was the last date of this little American tour that DC sent me on for Batman Damned. And I caught something somewhere. I mean, this is pre-pandemic, obviously. So it's just, a week and a half straight of shaking hands and New York Comic-Con and all that different kind of stuff. It finally caught up with me that last day in Chicago. And I just, after that signing session, I collapsed. I mean, I caught some kind of, mild flu or something like that. But yeah, that entire time, I was thinking to myself, man, I'm probably not coming off very great because I'm not feeling great. But it was like, am I going to get sick? Am I not going to get sick? I thought I could power through, but no, that night it was like completely power down. So no, it was, I appreciate you, making the trip to do that interview. That was great of you.
Well, you floored me because you had a flight to catch to go back to Italy.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, take your time. It's fine. And I'm like,
yeah.
All right. Lee has the power to hold up a flight.
Oh, no, it was the next morning. It was first thing the next morning. That was awesome. Okay. That was really fun. I was like, this flight's going to be great. Let me get as much, medicine in me as I can before an international flight. But at least
whether you were under the weather or not, I know you made quite the impression on my pal Ryan here. Working with Ryan and being friends with him, I've heard this story a number of times, and I'm just like, oh man, that's great.
I feel better now. So okay.
So I know, my first exposure to your work, Lee, was actually reading the website, reading Batman on Film, and seeing a drawing, a penciling that you did of kind of a character study of the Joker. And then I think shortly thereafter, your Two-Face as well. And I had never seen anything like it. I thought the approach and the realism in just, the way you went after those characters was something I'd never seen before. And it really floored me. I'd love to hear a little bit more about sort of what fuels your take on the characters and how you sort of arrived at a lot of the design work you've done.
Well, that was right when, Bill, you and I think had just started talking at that point in time. And it was just purely, a fan thing. I was starting to do Lex Luthor, I think, at the time. And my comic career it existed, but it at that point in time, I wasn't really well known at all. And I was really dying to get a hold of the Batman characters in general and do something with those characters. I had done Batman before in a crossover book for Wildstorm called Batman Deathblow with Azzarello, but we really didn't get a chance to do any of the villains. So that was really what I was dying to do. And you know, at that point in time, they were still casting that the second Christopher Nolan movie, and so that was all just speculation at the time of, hey, what could this look like? We had, you know, Batman Begins had just come out, and at that point in time, we knew really nothing about what was gonna be, what could be. It was just that world that Nolan set up in that first film. Where do we go from, you know, where do we go from there? And when I was working on Lex Luthor, pretty much at the same time, there was a third issue that had Batman guest star in it. And Azzarello and I had been talking for a while about, you know, just spitballing and stuff like that, what we would do with different characters. And there was a scene of, I think Lex is reading the newspaper and he's in Gotham City, and there's a little article about the Joker. And that was, you know, right after I'd done that drawing, for Batman on film, I just said, you know, I'm going to put this character in here and just, you know, put this version of the Joker in here. And so I mean, that really kind of kicked it off, and you know, the look evolved after that.
Mm-hmm.
That first drawing was really extreme. It was really it was really Fight Club influenced. You know, it was I thought he could have, you know, that Tyler Durden kind of style of dressing and flamboyancy to him and stuff like that. So that, and then just the horrific kind of face cutting there was way more extreme than it wound up being in the eventual book that I did. But that pretty much was the kickoff of the Joker for me.
I remember you told me that the Two-Face was based on Denzel Washington. Am I right? Or if I'm remembering correctly?
Absolutely. I am a huge Denzel Washington fan. I think he's, you know, one of the greatest actors to ever do it. And I just remember seeing Training Day and thinking, you know, this guy is just perfect for this. I mean, you know, Harvey Dent has to be a handsome man that's like a charismatic man. And I thought, you know, Denzel's got it. He's got that in spades. And I'd never seen him flip it and be that kind of evil before in a role, that cruel, that kind of, you know, he was really malevolent. And I thought that's perfect for Harvey Dent. And, you know, that it was just that kind of spitballing, you know, see what could be. That was all that was.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to ask Bill kind of as we were preparing for this, because the years go by and you start to misremember timelines. And, you know, I had seen, obviously I've seen the character, the drawing of both Joker and Two-Face over the years again and again, but I was sort of misremembering the timelines. And when I went back and looked at it, I'm like, this is just so prophetic. Do I have the timelines right? Was this really right after? Because in my memory, it was just as you describe it, right after Batman Begins.
Yes.
And then knowing what we got in The Dark Knight, you know, with Heath Ledger and that portrayal, obviously, you know, what you did was, as you said, very sort of extreme and graphic. And it was a bit of a dialed back version of that. But I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy like really had his finger on the pulse. And, you know, what you say about sort of this Fincher and style or inspired vibe that you see there, you know, there's a bit of that both in, you know, what we saw hit film, but then obviously shows up in spades in your book Joker. That was just Bill and I talked about this a lot in the past. It's the kind of, I think it's typical for, you know, the movie making business in general, and also it speaks of kind of the distance between what we do in the comics versus what they do in the films. And sometimes that distance can be, you know, that gap can be bridged.
but usually not intentionally, as was the case there, because, really, and this it really goes up until today, they don't involve almost anybody in those movies. There's certainly no contact from us and them, or usually very little. That changed before Joker, the 2018 Joker movie. I actually did have a little bit of contact with the writer while they were developing that, but purely on kind of a, hey, what do you think about the look at this guy? What about Gotham City? It was more, I hesitate to even call it a consultation. I think he was just kind of picking various people's brains, who worked on the character. But back in the Dark Knight days, there was no contact between the studio and us. We knew nothing about what they were doing, and whether or not they knew what we were doing is kind of up for discussion, but I certainly don't know. I've never heard from anybody in that production, and so we were just Brian and I were off doing our own thing. And it just was one of those zeitgeisty kind of things that where what we were doing vibed very well with what Nolan did with that movie. And I mean, I always add to that, what Nolan did with that movie is absolutely incredible. You can't take anything away from Heath Ledger. He absolutely, created a genius portrayal of that character. That's not to, take anything away. I think that movie is outstanding. So it was just that moment in time, and I suppose there was something in the air, and that bubbled up on both that movie and our book.
Well, in this book, what I think when it was announced, and it seemed like it was a collection of your art, and it could have maybe like the impression maybe this is just like a coffee table book of just looking through your art, which of course that's great. That's a great idea. But I think what adds more is an introductory Q&A with you on looking back on the upcoming chapter of this project and this project. And when it came to Joker, it was really great to read some more insight from you firsthand on some influences. And I think, not to like give it all away, but it was when you'd mentioned the Black Dahlia, and then Christopher Walken in the movie King of New York both played influences on this Joker, and I'd never come across that before. And looking back now, it's totally there. So that's just like a little piece of added piece of information in this book that I think really makes this unique too, is more insight from you on specific pieces of projects.
Yeah, the King of New York thing was definitely Brian. When we first started talking about that book, Brian and I were both big fans of that movie. And I remember us talking about how he was that performance in particular for Christopher Walken, it's such a quiet, kind of scary performance, where throughout the movies, you almost don't know which way he's going to go. He could have gone another way in that movie just as easily as he kind of took it all the way down, into the gutter like he did. And that's something that Brian, I think, definitely wanted to tap into for Joker, and his personality was this kind of slightly quieter portrayal of the character, like less of that Cesar Romero or Jack Nicholson over the top, angle on the character, which is also fantastic. I'm a big fan of both those performances too. It's just, our version was at the time kind of a response to this idea that we both had, where in the comics, it seemed like the Joker had become like an anti-hero, and he still kind of is, where people just, they're as big a fan of the Joker as they are of Batman. And Brian and I, that first meeting we had, or the first, they detail it in the book pretty well. We were at a bar at San Diego Con, and I remember both of us just looking at each other and going, how does this guy ever have henchmen? Who does this guy ever get to follow him? He's a complete psychopath. I mean, he's like a rabid dog. If you get close to him, he's going to bite you. Mm-hmm. So it's just that it was an attempt to show if this guy could exist in a real world, what he would be like. And I remember telling Brian a story about a kid I knew in, this was going back to middle school and first couple years of high school. And he's just a complete psychopath, this kid. And anytime we would hang out, it would wind up going bad. And it was just like, it would like, he would come around and be like, hey, what do you want to do? And I'd be like, oh God, like this is just gonna go badly in one way or another. And so that was kind of what I thought about with the Joker. Is it's just like, when this guy shows up, your stomach has to kind of turn, because you just know that this is gonna be something horrible is gonna happen. That was the attempt anyway with the book.
Well, I know, I went back and actually just did a recent reread of the book, and it's so great, that in your new, the Art of Lee Bermejo book, the reader sort of gets a peek behind the process and some additional detail to your thoughts, and then, where you're headed. But hearing you describe sort of the intent of what you wanted to do with the project, like, obviously you guys knocked it out of the park, because when I was reading this thing, rereading it, like I'd read it before, right? But I'm reading this and like my body's tense, like my shoulders are tight, my back's all, in knots, because it is just so unnerving. And it is, a combination, I'd like to ask you about your frequent collaborations with Brian Azzarello too, but, Brian's writing, but the way that you framed the panels, I noticed there's a lot of implied things just off panel. And then you sort of open it up to these reveals, but it's this building sense of dread that I got as some of the panels progress. And then it exposes, the scene in this like really raw way. In particular, when Joker's kind of, as you said, very kind of quiet and more reserved. And then you get to the passages where he is on an absolute rampage through Gotham, taking out everything in his way. And it's just like, this is a terrifying character in a way that is more effective than when he's over the top and, not to say cartoonish, but very big and very broad all the time. This sort of slow build to terrify the audience just works so well there.
No, thanks. That was what we wanted to do, was basically take you on a ride with this kind of crazy animal and just see and Brian, I think too, wanted to really explore a bit of the Joker is charismatic. We found as we were developing that book that you can't really get past that part of him where he is kind of this, I don't want to call him a Charles Manson type figure, but he's got to have a bit of have a bit of that charisma that would allow wayward people to want to follow him, or a character like Harley Quinn. We talked a lot about that, what she would be like. And, we just tried to kind of take all the elements of what the character is in the purest form, and then distill them into something that we thought could work within our world. And I think much in the same way they did with all the films, they try to do that. In the Burton movie, they tried to, Jack Nicholson's Joker very much tried, it worked within that world and it functioned within the circumstances that Burton was dealing with. And then Nolan, obviously took that to another level with his film, and that Joker being kind of a terrorist agent of chaos. He really made that version of the Joker work for that world, for his particular world. So I think that's just what we knew we had to do, setting out to tackle that project was okay, how do we do this? How do we interpret this character in a way that only works when we do it? Like if someone else did this version of the character, it probably wouldn't work, or maybe it would, but you'd like to think it wouldn't, that it's just very specific to the world we kind of play in when we do our various projects.
How did, going back to this new book, what was the genesis of how it came together and whatnot? Let us know.
Oh, cool. Yeah. This, the original project came about through Urban Comics in France. They're the publishers in France of all things DC, but they do a lot of other comics as well, both American and French. Their division of Dargo, and they wanted to start doing art books. And there was an editor designer team that it was. Her name is Sarah Champier. She was kind of the originator of the idea and wanted to start doing art books through Urban of American, not just American, actually, you know, just comic book creators working working for DC. And so yeah, they chose me as the first kind of subject of the book, and I was pretty honored to have that opportunity. And you know, I'd been working at DC for almost 20 years at that point, so there was a lot of material, and that's really where it started. I think the art book came out in France in 2018. And
I remember you posting that on social media, French version, and I was like, and I think instantly a ton of people asked right after, is it a US version coming?
Yeah.
Is the US version coming? Or do we need to learn French and start ordering the French version? Which, I mean, we were willing, but I'm glad a US
yes, I know some people did. It's the French version's it's bigger and kind of it looks a lot different. You know, there's some design elements that are quite different. I wasn't sure at that point if they were going to do an American version. DC, they've done a few art book kind of things in the past with Frank Wyatley and Darwin Cook, I think, had when they did a few of those books, but they had discontinued them a few years ago. So I wasn't sure if they were going to pick this up as well and do it. I was thrilled when they did. And as a result, I think, you know, I think they're doing a Spanish edition that comes out in May through ECC. And then I believe Panini in Italy is going to do a version here. So it's nice to see other countries start to get on board with it as well. You know, it's cool. It's interesting now that kind of, you know, the DC's more global, I think, than a lot of people were prepared for. You know what I mean? It's started to become, you know, as big in other countries really as it is anywhere. And so that's a cool thing to kind of see develop and have this art book also kind of come out, you know, in various places and see how that all unfolds.
Yeah, you're known a lot for Batman and of course Joker and so forth, but some of the stuff I loved looking at here was the other character, especially with John Constantine. It's just really an awesome job. I mean, there's a lot of subtleties, I think, even in his cigarette smoke. Am I right? If I'm interpreting it right. So I just, you know, some thoughts about when you're drawing, I guess, these characters and the little things that you add around the main person, you know, if it's Constantine, but there's things around him that relate to him or implied or whatever. Just
yeah, I think it's I always try to imagine the characters as completely as I can. So I guess I approach it the same way a filmmaker would, or you know, you try to think about even in, you know, how that character would act, what that character would be, you know, what that character would smell like, the environments you want to see that character. I just try to put that all into kind of a pot and mix it around and see what comes out. But I particularly love costume design and thinking about how do I make this fantastical character, whoever it may be, and how do I make that work in my kind of, I don't want to say the real world, but you know what I mean? There's more of a realistic approach to the stuff without losing the kind of fantastical qualities that still make the character cool, right? I remember that show Smallville, and people were all kind of waiting to see the costume, right? Like, and finally get into the Superman costume. And I remember there's like a series of episodes where he like puts on a black trench coat and has like, and I remember going like, that's not Superman. That's not what makes Superman cool. You know, it's the costume you have to make that cool to make him Superman. Otherwise he's a kid in a black trench coat. And, you know, same goes for any character, Batman included. It's just, you try to find the elements that are pure, that are absolute that character. So you said Constantine, you know, he, like, his thing is he smokes cigarettes. He's a chain smoker. It's part of his, you know, the best Constantine story ever done was, I think, you know, what was it called? Filthy Habits or something by the Garth Ennis, Steve Dillon story where he gets lung cancer. And so it's just, you try to take all, you know, Constantine has a trench coat, and I got to make that trench coat look like the coolest trench coat you've ever seen, that he like sleeps in, you know, in a car or where, you know, you just try to get the idea of that character as best you can, you know, or when I do Superman, and it's like, I want to make him look like he's a statue, you know, to a certain extent, like the light is almost reflective off of him because he's so, you know, it's like he's just that impenetrable, I guess is the word, you know, like just, each of the characters needs their own, you know, interpretation. And that, I guess that's where I have my fun and play around with the costume design a little bit and see what I can offer that's mine and reflects what I like and my aesthetic, but at the same time, doesn't ever lose the character. You know?
Yeah. So if I may, there are two quotes that you had in this book that I want to read real quick. One was where you'd said, the principle of comics is to make our imagination work, to show impossible things. And then a second quote, you'd said, it is precisely the realistic elements of a non-realistic story that stimulate the mind the most. I felt like that is such a perfect kind of summary on your art. That could have almost been the first page of your book as we explore your art through the years. And I think kind of what you just said, I think summarizes that really well too, in how we're, especially in a story like Batman Damned, if we're dealing with some supernatural elements, and even Constantine, some supernatural elements, but there's so much realism ingrained in the pages that it just, that's almost like, that's like the beauty of comic books right there.
I think so, but I totally respect and appreciate artists with other styles. You know, I definitely think that there's room for all, but for my taste, if you show me an interpretation of the character that is very superheroic and operatic and kind of big and loud, it can work depending on who that artist is, but I don't know how to do that myself. I don't know how to not take the character through a little bit of a filter and try to personalize it in some way or another. And I know that when I was a kid, I was the kid that got annoyed when they drew Spider-Man and you didn't see the line where the mask connects to the shirt. Like, that annoyed me. You know, I was annoyed that he's got these web shooters on his wrists, but it looks like he's got nothing under the costume. It just looks like it's painted on his skin or whatever. And I remember the first time I saw Alex Ross do Marvels and he did that with Spider-Man. It was like a eye-opening moment of, you can absolutely do that in comics. And you know, I wanted to take it even a step further, which was, you know, you've got a character like Batman, you know, what does this guy do? How does he survive a night out doing what he does? And how can you make that costume look like the silhouette of the costume everybody knows and loves, but inside that silhouette, give it the details that make me, when I'm drawing it, look at it and go, yeah, okay, you know, if this guy's wearing this crazy outfit, maybe he can protect himself enough to take a bullet, or, you know, whatever the case may be. It's just, you know, which isn't, that's not the case when I draw someone like Superman. I don't have to worry about that. You know, I can make him look like I said, like almost like more of a statue, because he's literally from another planet and his costume is too. So I don't necessarily have to play by the same rules in my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Are you happy? Do you think the book, does it, is it a good reflection on your work, all your work with DC? Is there anything missing or that you wish was in there, or are you good to go?
It's a pretty good selection of stuff up until about 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got a lot of the main kind of pieces. Obviously, you know, you can't do all the it's already 340 pages, and it's a full 340 pages. So I didn't want to beat people over the head with the stuff either. One of the big discussions was, my work it's very heavy. It's full, that's full of information. So 340 pages, it's getting to the end of that book. I don't want people to just be exhausted of what, looking at small details and stuff like that. But I think for that first 20 years, that's a pretty good glimpse into the kind of evolution that I've had. There's the detective comics I'm doing now. I wish we were able to include some of those, but it was just, I was starting to do them after the book was even out. So, that'll be for something else, somewhere else down the line. I don't know if they'll do a poster book, hopefully, or, something.
Yeah.
Like,
Hope so.
So
how long does it take you to do a comic book cover?
Usually it takes me 4 days, 5 days if it's really intense. Like I just did a Detective Comics cover with like 5 characters on it, and it took a while. It took about 5 days to do that, just because the amount of sheer amount of detail. But usually, about 4 days beginning to end.
And since there's a whole section or a whole chapter on it's called the covers. Is there when you're doing a cover, is there an element of the story you're trying to represent, or is it more ambiguous in regards to that, or what's behind the cover?
A little bit of both. I think that the best covers, or at least my favorite covers, are the covers that aren't so story specific that it makes you go, well, I don't know who this character is, so why do I want to pick this? If you see Batman fighting some guy you don't know, like a brand new villain, I tend to not want to do those kind of characters on covers, because I don't want to get in the way of the casual fan coming in and going, oh, that's a cool Batman image, but I do want it to convey some kind of story. I definitely want there to be some kind of storytelling on the cover, even if it's subtle storytelling, like, if it's a close-up of someone's face, I'd like there to be something else going on in the face that makes you kind of do a double take or something like that. I just want there to be a small element of intrigue when you look at that cover. Like, what is this, or what could this be?
Yeah,
that's how I go about the covers. Oh yeah,
that's what drew me into the Generation Shattered book. Actually, was the Lee Bermejo cover. I honestly didn't really think I was going to read it, but I mean, the Batman guy right there, and then the cover as a whole, I mean, that drew me in. And I think that it's exactly what you said. It caused intrigue, and I bought it, and then I read the story, and I really liked it. So
cool.
Mission accomplished.
That was fun because it has that old Batman look from the serials, the 40s, which I love. When I was a kid, when the Burton Batman movie was coming out, I think it was 10 or 11, they put out those serials on VHS, that they jumped on board the whole Batman mania. And we definitely had those serials on VHS, and I used to watch those a lot,
Yeah.
So it was like I was just consuming anything that was Batman that you could throw at me, at the time. And so I have a pretty fond memory of that version of those characters, as crude and kind of, funny as they are now when you look at them.
Well, Lee, I know in the book, talking about the detail that you put in your artwork and the time commitment it takes to sort of achieve that level of detail and have storytelling elements in your art. I know you talk about what the process was to have to accurately replicate the 1970s for before Watchmen, Rorschach, and talk about a title or a franchise that's so tied with sort of not supernatural, but sort of superpowered, otherworldly, unrealistic elements with real places and time and world history. Could you tell us a little bit about what that process was and any challenges or just any fun that you had sort of having to achieve that goal with that 70s setting?
Well, the fun was just researching it, and I've been to New York a number of times. My brother lived in New York, but I've always been to the New York post 1997 New York or whatever, when the city's really different now than it was back in the 70s and 80s, and that was what was inspiring Frank Miller for Year One and The Dark Knight Returns and all that stuff, and obviously Alan Moore and Watchmen and that kind of more grimy New York. And so it was fun to research and watch grindhouse movies from the 70s that I had never seen. Brian was really interested in doing a grindhouse movie. He Watchmen is like this amazingly orchestrated piece of comic art that it's complex and multi-layered, and both of us, like, the first thing we talked about with that book was we don't want to do that at all. We want to avoid following in the footsteps of what Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons did, and we want to do something that respects that character because that's the character they wanted us to draw. But Brian wanted to do a grindhouse movie, something that just felt really exploitacious, and the bad guy's he's a disco dancer with a white tiger. It's just it's this really ridiculous kind of stuff in there, and so that was fun. It was fun to watch, kind of get into those movies, and especially looking at them now, it's like they could never make movies like that. They could never make movies like that now. But it was a fun research process, but the actual drawing of it was a total slog because it's, like every detail had to be 70 specific. So every car, every sign on a building, every, just even going in and doing the diner scenes that we had a lot of those. It was like finding what a diner looked like in the 70s and make sure you weren't drawing a diner. I mean, you never know with that stuff. It's like just drawing the wrong soda fountain, for example, can completely throw off the effect. So it was a slog. I prefer doing, cities like Gotham or Metropolis, where you could just kind of make it up. Just, if you want to do a 1950s car, throw it in there. It fits. It's Gotham. If you want to do a building that's just a bunch of statues, you can get away with that.
Was it a payoff? I'm sorry. Was it a payoff that you got to insert Travis Bickle?
That was the whole point for me. Wow. Honestly, that was the selling point of the project. When Brian was like, well, we have to have Travis. We have to have Travis Bickle in there. He's one of the main inspirations for Rorschach. I thought, oh, that's just so meta and cool. Right? He gets a cab ride from Travis Bickle. Like people don't not everybody catches on to that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny. I mean, I remember when the issue came out, it wasn't like a big talking point. People just, I remember one person wrote online something like, yeah, what was up with that scene with him in the cab? What, that was such a wasted piece of story. And I thought, did they not know what?
Oh no, they don't get it.
They don't get it. Okay.
I know a lot of then people mention you and your artwork, and then you go straight to the Joker graphic novel. But there's one you did, which is pretty cool. It's Batman Noel. So any thoughts about it? And it's it's featured in the book as well. And how do you, when you look back on that project, what are your thoughts?
that's the project that the most people like of mine. You know, Joker's like, it's such a hard, dark, violent book that it's not for everybody, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Noelle is kind of like the book that I get the most to this day. I have the most people talk about, even more so than I think than Joker. It's just
okay.
Yeah, it's surprising. That book, it was really my first kind of foray into, I don't even want to call it writing because I was just adapting another story, but it was the first time they kind of gave me the keys to the kingdom, and I just thought, well, okay, I've done Batman Deathblow, which is its own thing, you know, and Joker was another thing, and Batman literally was in 4 pages of it or something, something like that. I'd kind of done these few pages in Lex Luthor and Batman, but I still hadn't scratched that itch of a Batman story, you know, where you're following him around on a night where he is Batman. So yeah, that's where that book became, you know, the most fun for me was, you know, I got to do it all, you know, the death of his parents, and I got to throw Robin in there, the classic kind of Batman and Robin from the Adam West, you know, period. And then, you know, even take it as far as the kind of future stuff that I wound up kind of revisiting a little bit in We Are Robin with the Batman and Joker gangs, you know what I mean? The kind of street gangs and stuff. And so it was a fun project, and you know, really to this day, kind of like the most kid-friendly thing I've ever done, I guess.
I think it's super accessible. So I think, I mean, I fully understand why you would get that feedback on that book, because one, it's beautiful to look at. When you were describing your approach to Superman, the panel that came to mind was, you know, Superman sort of descending with this glowing aura around him as he's, you know, your version of the Ghost of Christmas Present.
Sure.
And just, you know, gorgeous to look at. And, you know, one of my other favorite things in that book that you mentioned is, you know, sort of the look back to Batman and Robin. And you get the 60s-ish costumes through the Lee Bermejo lens. It kind of filtered into a bit of its own thing. It's become
I'm such a fan of that stuff. The 60s stuff, I'm a huge fan of. I mean, that's my first memories are watching that movie from the, you know, my parents renting that VHS tape and putting it on, and me, you know, like watching these crazy guys in capes where, you know, they'd slide down a pole and get to the bottom, and they in their costumes, you know. I didn't get the humor. I just thought it was so cool. I took it totally seriously, you know.
These two other guys, they'll tell you their conduit into Batman is going to be Batman the Animated Series.
Sure.
With me, I'm with you. It was the Adam West Batman TV series and movie, and and I thought it was as serious as the Dark Knight when I was, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. So
absolutely. I remember freaking out, and there's a Riddler episode where they're outside this building, and this is the kind of stuff that I get into or got into as a kid, and you could totally see it reflected now in a lot of what I do. But he goes to pull out the Batarang, and it's like there's a Batarang shaped pouch on the belt, and he pulled, and then I just remember going like, oh, because I was that kid going, okay, so he's got this Batarang, right? How does it fit? Is it hooked on the belt? Like what? And I was that kid. I don't know why, but I was super concerned with things making sense.
Yeah, when the utility belt in the comics went to the little, like the tubular type things, I was like, how does he get all that shit in? You know, where's it?
Exactly.
Where's he pull it out of? So, but yeah, and I'm not going to keep you forever, and I know these guys may have a couple more questions, but I got to ask you, because we may or may not have talked about this, but whatever. The Robert Pattinson suit in the Batman, is got a little Lee Bermejo inspiration. I got to tell you, don't you think?
Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah,
I can see it. I mean, I think that version of the costume is probably the closest we're ever going to get to seeing something like what I do film.
Yeah.
You know, they're taking other stuff too. Like,
Sure.
you know, the cowl is very Gotham by Gaslight to me. It looks like, you know, it looks like that a lot. But I really responded to that costume when I saw the shots of the what is it, the stunt guy and the motorcycle. Those pictures out there, and that finally you could kind of see the costume. I remember just thinking, that's it. You know, he's got the kind of cargo pants. They're not tight. You know, they've got little padded armor pieces on it. He's got a pouch belt with hooks on it. He's got this kind of angular armor on his chest. And I mean, you know, they're doing their whole, you know, they're doing their thing with that movie. But even when I saw the trailer and just, you know, saw how David Fincher, they're going with that, I thought, oh, this is it. This is the Batman that it seems like the Batman I've been really waiting to see, which is, you know, this more homemade Batman, less of the kind of, you know, super complex futuristic looking costume. It's a more kind of grounded costume. Yeah, it all looks great. That trailer blew me away.
You think there's a little Adam West cowl in the Batman cowl?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that it definitely looks like there's a bit of that vibe. And you know, even the Batmobile, when I saw the Batmobile, I thought, oh, this is so cool. You know, it just looks like I mean, it's radically different than anything that's been done since the Burton movies all, you know, forward. And I like elements of everything. You know, I'm a fan of the Burton films. I'm a fan of, you know, I like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. I'm not a huge fan of Dark Knight Rises, but yeah, I love elements of what Snyder did in terms of like you know, he took that comic book Batman, that Jim Lee kind of Frank Miller Batman, and really brought that to life. I'm a fan of it all, but I'm really curious to see what they do with this one, just because it really feels to me on every level like it's got you know, it shares a lot with my aesthetic. So I'm excited to see, you know, what it looks like.
Awesome. Before I let these guys take us out of here, but that year one inspired Robert Pattinson Batman artwork you did was awesome. And it will be hanging in my office at some point. It was great.
Yeah, I'm trying to get some prints of that made. So that'll be my foray into some of the print stuff. Yeah. So that
would be great. When I saw that, you know, when I saw that shared online, you know, obviously knew, you know, the train had certainly left the station a long time ago to get that in the book, but I was like, ooh, that would look so nice on a big giant page in an art book. But yeah, just a gorgeous piece there. I loved it.
Yeah, I think they have a hard time with a lot of that stuff, because even the Mad Max piece that I did, the dragon tattoo covers that I did, those were all done for DC, but they couldn't get those into the book because the film division stuff is so detached from the comic books. I mean, it really is a different world, you know. I think they purposely kind of keep the two things very, very, very separate, because I would have loved to have seen that Mad Max piece show up in the book as well. Okay. But yeah, apparently there's contractual problems between, you know, the various films and stuff. But yeah, you know, that drawing that piece, I'm a huge fan of Mazzucchelli. Obviously, that year one image is one of my favorite Batman images of all time. And I remember actually seeing that ad in Batman comic books when I was a kid and just going, "Ooh, this is kind of cool. You know, what's this?" It was so startlingly simple, you know, like in a Jim Aparo Batman comic book at the time. And then you'd see this band, this Mazzucchelli, very stark Mazzucchelli image. But I remember like one of the first things I thought of when I saw that Pattinson costume was, you know, it would be really cool if the first poster of that movie was that shot, but with this you know, but with this costume. And so
Yeah.
it was just a fun way to, you know, foray into the kind of doing some of the limited print stuff, film poster print stuff. I've done a little bit of that with Mondo too, so it's fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoy doing those.
Well, Lee, I thank you so much for joining us all the way across the Atlantic. I know it's evening in Italy, it's morning here for us, so we'll let you get to the rest of your evening. But I know both of these gentlemen have had a chance to speak with you in the past. Let me just say, for me, it was a real pleasure and very nice to hear about, you know, sort of the approach and the way you go about your work, and very excited for this book. I don't have a copy yet. I'm waiting for mine to get delivered, and I'm going to spend quite a bit of time with it. So thank you for joining.
Thanks so much for having me again, and everybody stay safe, and hopefully we'll you know, we'll get out of this mess before too long.
Beside the book, Lee, anything else you want to plug before you go?
You know, I can't plug anything else right now beside the book, but I will say this. I will give you guys this, that I am doing a Batman short story with Azzarello that
great
will come out sometime this year. It's finished, so I don't know where or when it's going to show up, but when it comes out, we can talk about that too. But yeah, sure. it's a cool little thing, but I'll just say that it's got probably a lot of the Batman characters I've never done. So it's like this kind of interesting little cap to the you know, mine and Brian's little mini Batman universe.
Nice,
excellent,
nice.
Cool. Thanks again so much for having me, guys.
All right, man.
Thanks for talking.
Be safe and
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Have a good one.
Bye.
You have been listening to the official podcast of the one and only Batman on Film website. On Twitter, follow BOF at Batman on Film and the Batman Podcast Network at BatPod Network. For Jett and everyone at Batman on Film, I'm announcer Rachel. Thanks for listening to the authoritative, definitive, the original Batman on Film.